Welcome to Media in the Mix, the only podcast produced and hosted by the School of Communication at American University. Join us as we create a safe space to explore topics and communication at the intersection of social justice, tech, innovation, and pop culture. Welcome, Dean Fulwood, to a bonus episode of Media in the Mix. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you about SOC, our students, media, what they're up to, and the changes that we'd like to see this year. So first off, how's your year been going? Anything you're excited about in 2023?
Grace, I am excited. I'm happy to be here with you in Media in the Mix. This is a wonderful product, and I'm so grateful for your work on this. So thank you for doing it.
Thank you. I appreciate you. It's been very fun. We've had a chance to talk about a lot of different things, a lot of different issues, topics. Last episode, we had our first student episode, which was great. We got a chance to hear from our students themselves. Can you just give us a little background on yourself and kind of how you got to this position of Dean of SOC for someone that may not know or may not heard?
I sort of would credit the year 2020 and all of the things that were going on in our society as putting sort of the bee in my bonnet for wanting to be dean at SOC. Prior to 2020, I had worked for about 30 years as a newspaper journalist at a number of newspapers, probably most notably the Los Angeles Times Washington Bureau here in Washington. And the newspaper industry was changing. And I sort of left the newspaper industry and worked for a decade in a think tank, the Center for American Progress, where I studied the intersection of media, popular culture, and public policy. And that work sort of was a perfect transition from practical journalism to the academy. So in 2020, it was George Floyd. It was a global pandemic, and it was what I perceived to be a threat to our democracy right in our own government. And I thought, wow, I've written about government, I've studied it in a think tank. How can I put that into the employ of helping the next generation? And it was at that point that I was reached out by the university to say, hey, would you consider being Dean of SOC? And it just sort of perfect convergence. It's almost like that vanishing point where everything is lined up just to be for the perfect person.
That's great. So journalism and democracy hold a real personal.
Absolutely. I became a journalist I sort of consider myself a part of the Watergate baby boom.
Okay.
So I went into the newsroom as a college student, having studied 4 years all about Fulwood and Bernstein and the Washington Post and Watergate and Richard Nixon. And I really believed that journalists played a role in helping the public understand, at that time, a crisis to our democracy. And I've been inspired by journalists from that point on to want to do this kind of work.
Let's dive right into it.
Okay.
So I want to ask you first, what does democracy mean to you, Dean Fulwood?
You know, that's really important to me. Democracy is what our country is. It's foundational to our country. The forefathers, when they were creating independence from England, they enshrined in the Constitution First Amendment protections because they understood that the public is a part of the democracy. The public has to be informed in order to be able to be self-governing. And that's really the role that journalists play in our democracy, is keeping the population informed so that they can make decisions that work for the good of the society. Democracy is just really foundational to everything that we want to do. Part of the overarching theme of what I want to see us do in SOC is to give students two things in particular. One is that they have experience that they'll be able to, over the 4 years that they're here, be able to take those experiences directly from the classroom into the workplace. That's really important. That's critical because, you know, let's face it, a college education is very expensive. And you have to be able to show a return on that investment. And that return is the work that they'll be able to do when they get out of school. The second thing that I think is important is to be able to go out and get a job, but for what? What's the point? If you're not working for the good of our society, for the good of humanity, making a lot of money isn't very good. And that's where the democracy piece comes into it. I think it's just essential that students have an understanding that they're working for the common good to be able to protect our democracy. And that's really the role for journalism in our society.
So, before we get into our students and kind of what they do at SOC, do you think that media, and especially media today, since we know that the world of media and digital media has grown tremendously in terms of the resources that we have, but do you think that that can influence and support democracy, and can it even endanger democracy in a way?
In a word, yes. I think our society today is really being driven in large part by technological advances, and they're happening so fast. Sometimes it's hard for people to keep up with them. If you go back and look at it sort of in a historical perspective, technology has always driven the way in which Americans or humans see the world. Fire was a technology. The automobile was a technology that transformed America. The telephone. In our lifetime, it has been the communications that people can hold in their hand with a phone, and to be able to, and computers, and to be able to communicate with each other at lightning speed, so fast. And that creates an opportunity for greater democracy. That is, greater ability of the average person to be able to be a player in our society. But it also creates a problem in terms of misinformation and deceit and distrust. Because you have so much information, people don't know how to filter that. So it's almost Dickinsonian in that it's the best of times and it's the worst of times. What I'm hoping for our students is that they'll be able to learn enough about how all of these systems work so that they can discern what is good, what is bad, and then carry that forward in their work.
That's great. And we see so much misinformation nowadays. As a journalist yourself, how do you feel that we can combat misinformation?
The only way you can combat misinformation is with good information, and to be a critical consumer of news and information. And to understand that there is a purpose that everybody puts out for the information. So that not just accepting the information, it's being able to understand, why did that person say that? Why was that written? What was the real message that they were trying to impart? It takes work. It's hard. But I think to be an informed citizen, you have to understand the subtext to all of the messaging as well as just the message. You can't be a passive consumer, because then you can be taken advantage of, and that's just not healthy for our democracy.
Right. So, how do you feel with the classes we offer, the experiential learning programs? How do you feel our SOC students take what they learn and then apply it to democracy?
The whole notion of being well educated is having almost a cafeteria of options for learning. And I think we have that in SOC. Fundamental to that, and almost every class has some opportunity for students to get out of the classroom, to go up on Capitol Hill or go to the White House, or to work in an agency, or to work in a homeless shelter, where they can put what they're learning in the classroom into real practice. That is the strength of what we do in SOC. I'm told somewhere on the order of about 95% of our students have internships. That's amazing. That gives them the experience so that when they leave here, they can tell an employer, I know how to do something. And an employer will be able to recognize that. And we get that. I get calls almost every day from somebody wanting one of our students to come and work for them. Can't have them until they graduate, but you hear it all the time.
Yeah, because they know they're getting prepared.
They
more
know that they're
often.
getting prepared. That's really important. We're finding ways to create opportunities to even enhance what they're getting in the classroom. Professor Pallavi Kumar has created SOC3, which is it's a business in the school. It is an agency that allows students to be able to do public communications for a client and to produce a product for that client. And it's going gangbusters. We're getting more and more clients. The students are learning, they're excited about it. That's an example of it. We have opportunities for students to go to the Los Angeles Intensive and the New York Intensive, where they get to go and meet with industry leaders, alumni who have come through the school and are now working in fields that they want to go in Los Angeles in the film industry, in New York in the communications industry. Those are the kinds of things that get students out of the classroom and into the real world. I'm really excited about a project that we're going to be doing this coming fall, where 5 AU graduate students will go to Bergen and be a part of the bridge program with the University of Bergen in Norway. And then 5 of the students there are going to come here. And they're going to do that in concurrent weeks so that they'll have an opportunity to learn about investigative journalism across the Atlantic. I was in Norway and met with some of the students and the faculty at the University of Bergen and was completely blown away by the fact that they take investigative journalism very seriously. We think of investigative journalism very seriously here with our investigative journalism workshop. So that's an example of the kinds of things that we do. And then on the more scholarly side, we have Katie Borum's Center for Media for Social Impact. Fits perfectly with our notion about democracy because she is studying and producing real life examples of how you change public perception about social issues through comedy, through television, through media. Those are the kinds of things that our students are a part of, and it's just so exciting to see all that.
Yes, we actually will have Pallavi on the podcast, so stay tuned for that. We should be talking about SOC3, and I actually got to film them doing their thing behind the scenes with DC Kitchen, which was their last client last semester.
Yes.
And when I tell you, they created a whole PR plan, a whole marketing plan, and it was so impressive. And, these students are really applying what they're learning in the classroom out there, and it's very exciting. I also did LA Intensive in 2018, so I can vouch for that. It's great.
That.
Yes,
great,
I do.
Great,
yeah,
great.
It was a lot of fun, and you're right. You get so exposed to a network of people that you wouldn't normally have been exposed to be honest.
I think a lot of people who don't understand what goes on a college think that it's sort of an old-fashioned paper chase kind of setting where you're sitting in rows and rows and there's a musty old professor standing there shouting at people. Right. That's not what we do. Yeah. That is a outdated notion of what education is today. Yeah. Today, students are not exclusively in the classroom. We have classrooms, but they're learning by doing, and that's what they want. And that's what we're delivering for them.
And I noticed a lot more, there's more collaboration in the classroom.
Collaboration is a key word. I mean, collaboration goes with democracy. Collaboration goes with learning. It's not one way where, someone who's very learned and is just sort of Socratically feeding students. That doesn't work anymore. Yeah. SOC is a school of communication. Yeah. Journalism is one of four units that we have. Yeah. While I come from a journalism background and I'm very proud of what we do with journalism, we do some fantastic things in other areas as well. Film and media arts and the public communications and the communication studies are the other academic areas. And then there are the centers that we have too that I mentioned, the Center for Media Studies and then the Center for Environmental Filmmaking. I mean, those all contribute to giving students options for a career in communications fields. Journalism is close to my heart, but there's more to it. The quantity of jobs in journalism, to be perfectly honest, are not as great as they were
Right.
when I came out of college. So we have to have options for students to be able to find their way with a communications degree.
And it's actually unique in SOC that we have to do a minor, because I feel like that does give you the option of not really
Absolutely.
pigeonholing yourself to one thing. It's very
Absolutely.
unique. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's great. I want to move on to our our last two questions.
Okay.
So I'll ask first, whether you're in a position of leadership or not, how do you feel you can foster things like diversity and inclusion in a workplace, in a classroom?
Our society is changing. I mentioned that earlier. And in many ways, we are becoming, we already are a multicultural society. Um, I think by just showing up, I represent that on one level. I'm an African American man who has lived through a very interesting period in our nation's history. I think I understand and I personally identify with the needs and the challenges that we have for a multicultural society. One of the things I think is very true about AU is that there is a recognition of that need, that in order for our students to be successful in the real world, beyond just Washington or the United States, but globally, they have to be able to deal and interact with all different kinds of people.
Right.
And that's a critical piece of our inclusive excellence strategy on the campus and embedded in everything that we do in SOC. I take this extremely seriously. I talk about it endlessly, and I'm very aggressive about seeing that we have a more diverse student body, a more diverse faculty, a more diverse staff. And I live that every day, and I really, really push it for everybody that we talk about.
And in terms of being dean, and we can end on this note, Dean Fulwood, what's your mission statement for 2023? And what are some things that you'd like to see change?
People ask about mission statements, and that's a really difficult and complex thing to talk about. I came on board here in 2021 in the midst of a global pandemic. So for the first 20 months of being dean, I have been primarily focused with making sure that we are safe and healthy, and that our operations are working, that classes have gotten back to I won't say normal, but functional. We now operate in a hybrid system, which I think is going to be here forever. That's a change, and it requires us to sort of adapt. So, in terms of a mission, we've talked about wanting to foster democracy and wanting to give students a experience that they'll be able to take out. That is our primary mission. Right. Those two goals. In 2023. I want us to build on reopening our campus.
Okay.
But more importantly, I want to reimagine what a campus community would be. I mean, I think we saw some disruption during the COVID years where everything shut down, and it has had some tremendous impact on us. Student well-being and health and thriving is really important. Retention of students, to keep them engaged and here. Having our faculty and our staff want to be here and to create a community of caring and support for all of us. Those are things that I think are the big challenges that we have in 2023 and going beyond. Money. I want to see us raise money. We have a capital campaign. We're doing very well at it at this point, but we've got another year and a half to go, and I think that's a critical need. Our faculty needs support. Our students, many of our students, need support. And so we need to find supporters, donors, contributors to help us do all of those things that we were talking about, the LA intensive, the New York intensive, SOC3, all of those things take money.
Yeah.
And so I'm very intent on identifying supporters, trying to find new supporters, telling our story. And I think finally that's maybe I'll end there, is when I took this job, I knew that AU and SOC was great.
Mhm.
I don't think other people knew how great we are. And I think that's the job I think the dean has. That is mission one
Yeah.
of being able to get people to know what we're doing,
Mhm.
to tell our story in a way that's compelling, and to bring other people on board.
Mhm.
Some of those people are inside
Yeah.
the school, but a lot of them are outside the school, and we want to sort of create this community where people say, wow, I want to be a part of that.
I think you're doing a great job.
Well, I appreciate that, Grace. I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I've only been here for 6 months, but I am an AU SOC alum, both undergrad and grad. So it's very interesting to be on the other side of things and finally be able to give back. So it's very exciting.
We appreciate that.
Thank you. And thank you for joining me today to talk all about democracy, journalism, what else SOC has to offer, not just journalism. But it's very cool. I actually came growing up with a monarchy. So learning about democracy is another angle that I've been very invested in. And now that I'm living here in the US, it's a complete 180. So it's very interesting. Thank you so much for joining us on Media in the Mix. We look forward to having you on another episode.
Thank you.
Of course. And everyone, have a good one.